for it, ride for it. I'ma organize for it. Stay up in the night and in the morning I'ma rise for it. Heart for it, mind for it, ears for it, eyes for it. Peace and a place on this earth for me and mine for it. Work for it, ride for it. I'ma organize for it. Stay up in the night and in the morning I'ma rise for it. Heart for it, mind for it, ears for it, eyes for it. Peace and a place on this earth for me and mine for it.
Hello.
Are we on?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Hey, welcome. This is kind of a special episode. We're back to the informal format. Isaac, Deanna, and myself gathered to talk about a bit of breaking news. This Tuesday, August 11th, is the final day for voting in the primary elections. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, this Tuesday, August 11th. If you don't vote, everything's gonna not work out well, so you better go vote.
Exercise the truest expression of freedom and power.
Does everyone have a voting plan?
Yeah, we've had our mail-in ballots for like a month now. Mm-hmm. So drop those off at the government center because we don't know how long it'll take through the mail at this point.
For real.
The unfortunate truth of the matter.
Yeah, my plan is to go to the government center on Monday and just stay there till I get it done. I got some flexibility in the day.
Yeah.
Are you going to wear rubber gloves or?
I was definitely going to wear a mask. I haven't been wearing rubber gloves. Maybe I should.
Nah.
I'm going to sanitize. I seen they got the self-sanitizing strip on the doors at the county building.
Oh,
that caught my eye. Yeah.
Like the grocery store, like a mister?
No, it looks like it's, I don't know if the material like sweats it out or something, but it's like a sticker that's on the door handle and it's self-sanitizing.
Whoa.
Oh, so it like secretes onto the handle?
To the best of my knowledge, that's what it seems like.
It's probably some eco-lab technology.
Exactly, yeah. It didn't, I don't think it made me feel good when I seen it, but it did kind of amaze me.
It like secretly grabs your prints real quick as well as sanitizes, probably.
Hell yeah.
Anyways.
And then it plants the microchip on the back of your neck while you're leaving.
Yeah, the 5G network.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of attention on Minneapolis. In addition to the attention that's already on Minneapolis, we have our incumbent Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who's being challenged by Antone. Is it Antone or Antone? I've heard both.
I'm not sure.
I know it's Melton Mukes, Antone Melton Mukes.
You pronounce the X?
Yeah, Melton Mukes.
Okay, see, I'm learning.
I
was saying Mew.
Yeah, I was saying Mo for a while. Yeah, kind of an unknown. I'd never heard of him before. I don't know if you had.
No, me neither. And I seen the signs first around like the aisles. I would go there to walk, and I'm like, who is this guy? And then it took me a while to realize, oh, that's the person that's running to unseat Ilhan. So I seen the signs in the wild first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I learned about him probably from, I don't know
Like
where.
more recently, probably, or...
Yeah.
I feel like beginning of summer, maybe, I started hearing his name more so.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I feel like a lot of his, like, profile has been gained through, like, negative press, at least in my bubble, like... That's more where I've seen his name generated is like, I'm not about this guy.
Yeah.
Which like helps raise a person's profile at the end of the day, but.
That's true. I mean, that's my experience too, but then even the fact that I've seen it through the yard signs, like I can detect a genuine enthusiasm from him from like the sections of Minneapolis that don't want Medicare for all or don't want student debt cancellation or don't want Ilhan taking such bold progressive stances, you know? So I think it's true that he's generated a lot of negative press and people really are riding for Ilhan, but I think he is representing a genuine constituency that like wants to like rein in the progressivism on the seat. Progressivism, excuse me for such that word.
Meaningless.
Right.
It's like affordable housing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I feel like I've noticed the creep of his signs into Southside, but I've also noticed that his signs are often on rental properties or what I perceive to be rental properties, like multi-unit buildings.
So just fingers crossed that it's the landowners, not the renters.
Fingers crossed, but also like that's kind of shady, I guess.
I think it speaks to his constituency. Because I think that's the same. I first realized, like, damn, by Lake of the Isles and all over there on like that other side of Hennepin, like that wealthy district around the lakes, I seen his signs everywhere. So I'm like, okay, who is this guy? And then I realized he's running against Ilhan. I'm like, okay, I could like put two and two together. And then I have seen some signs start to pop up over south, but it does seem like easily could be landlord flag flying.
Definitely.
And I'm wondering if we're also seeing more signs because like we live close to the memorial. So like people are going to be putting up signs more this election because they know that like the blocks in the radius around 38th in Chicago is like going to be traveled often.
Yeah.
So it's like if you have a political agenda, now's the time to put your yard sign up.
Sell your newspaper, put your yard sign up.
Yeah. We were walking back to from the memorial and someone just like was chilling on their porch and they came up and asked for like donation to BLM. And like, yeah, it could have been a donation to BLM, but it's also fine if they're just like, hey, you're like a white person in this space. Give me money.
Pay the toll.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah,
pay the tax.
pretty much.
Hell yeah.
There should just be like a box. I haven't seen one. Is there? Are there people that just like collect money around the memorial?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I've thought about giving tours Northeast before, you know, but
just poach them from those like Segway tours.
Right, exactly.
The hidden Segway part of the tour is over here.
That's funny because I was actually reading a lot lately. I've been reading Professor Adolph Reed, and he does a lot of writing on New Orleans, and it's helped me think about like the gentrification economy because he talks about like the way that a space's identity is constructed really by real estate interests or hospitality interests to create neighborhoods, you know? So he was like talking about the show Treme and like the way that the lower Ninth Ward was being marketed, you know? So it made me think as far as like even to expand my own thinking, to not do that to myself and put myself in a box or like get caught up in these mystical notions of neighborhood that really don't produce broad solidarities, but can make you kind of provincial. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I remember last time I was in New Orleans, like the Tremaine neighborhood, they had like anti-Airbnb signs because that clearly was just an issue of people hoarding properties and extracting wealth.
Yeah. So just to bring it back to the elections, we wanted to record today because I think it caused, I know for me, and I think all of us, some tension in terms of like how do electoral politics show up on the show. I know for me, I have an interest in focusing on broad-based organizing that's not bound to the two-party system, union organizing, neighborhood organizing, solidarity-based organizing that's building real constituencies and not relying on politicians. And I feel like from my studies, I'm interested in divesting from the Democratic Party and building working class institutions. So studying like the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party or the Malcolm X grassroots movement in Chokwe Lumumba in that style of dual power organizing, or thinking about the attempt to build the Labor Party. So I'm hesitant to like spend a lot of time talking about Democrats, and I'm also not interested in lionizing Ilhan, you know, or like so that being said, I also think it's very important for us to support Ilhan. I think she's head and shoulders above Antone, and where I'd like to see her follow through on the commitment to public housing in a more concrete way by calling out Section 18 and RAD, her call for public housing, public policy, the function that's serving to like change the politics and break through the consensus in Washington. I really support that and salute that. She's done some really brave things. So we wanted to talk about it and talk a little bit about how the POLADs and the Upper Harbor Terminal development and the studying we've been doing around property ownership, gentrification, class and race dynamics in the city play into this election.
Hell yeah.
Word.
So that being said, I got a Twitter message the other day from the homie who sent me some records indicating that Charles Polad had donated $2,800, that Joe Polad had donated $1,000, and that Sarah Casey Polad had donated $2,800 to the Antone Melton Mukes.
And that was
campaign.
from FEC Records, I'm guessing?
Yes, FEC Records.
Like, this stuff was always like kind of mystifying to me, but like this stuff is out there for anyone to like look up. So I want to make sure to like drop these websites, or just like something you can search in Google, and like if you want to like, if you're curious about this, you can go on your own like goose hunt and see like who's funding politicians around the country and whatnot.
Hell yeah.
But yeah,
Joe Polad's in charge of Go Radio, right?
I believe that he's
that's
listed.
His segment.
He's listed on this donation is listed through his role with or his employer is listed as Twins Marketing.
Oh, okay.
Which is interesting though, because what you think about what Go 95 really is, in a lot of ways, it serves the function of being Twins Marketing, or marketing for the Audi dealerships that they own. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that means that his role is restricted to that.
Right. I mean, it never is if you're working for the fam.
Right. So. Exactly. Yeah. And Charles Polad is listed as director of the Polad Companies, and United Properties is directly under that arm of their empire, the Polad Companies.
Yeah, so I guess when you sent me that screenshot of the contributions, and I wasn't surprised. Like, I hadn't given it much thought, but like if I had, I think I would have been like, oh, they're probably funding Antone. Like, yeah, he's the serious challenger. And this like kind of brought me back to like, who else have they funded in Minneapolis specifically? And I've been doing some research around the new year, kind of like late December, early January.
In the before times.
Casual late research.
Yeah. When I felt, Anyways, when I was still much more in an electoral mindset, mind you, like that was the height of the Bernie phenomena that... Anyways,
Bernie round two.
You got to forgive me for that one. But yeah, so I was looking at our city council members and our mayor and seeing the influence. And like, I know Jacob Fry has given interviews where he's like been posed this question of like, oh, there's this conflict of interest. Like, they've directly financed your campaigns. And he just like goes to the canned line where he's like, if you think that's influenced my decision making one bit, like, not at all.
Yeah.
Like, no.
How dare you?
They gave me $11,000 in 2017, but that hasn't shaded my judgment. I didn't give them, I didn't push for UHT. I didn't give them fucking Dayton project. I didn't give them the fucking MART. What's that called? The
RBC, the Gateway.
RBC
Tower.
Gateway Tower.
Yeah.
Oh.
So yeah, $11,000 in 2017, which was the last city election year. And from 2014 to 2019, which is the most recent year you can get for annual reports. This is on Hennepin County's campaign finance site. $18,000 over the course of those 6 years.
To Jacob Fry.
To Jacob Fry's campaign, because he was a city council member.
Oh, okay.
Before becoming mayor.
Right. I forgot that.
And I'm sure 2020, because they just max out their donations. It's like $600. No, it's $1,000 max for an election year for mayor. And then non-election years for all positions, it's $250 max.
215?
250.
250.
But that's per person, per individual. So you have, couples, obviously. So double that for each, like, patriarch of the family, basically. So straight years, Jim, Bob, Bill, Polad, the three main inheritors of Carl Polad's wealth, giving maxed out donations.
Yeah, and it really makes sense, and it's like starting to connect the dots, or just to like think about that and the implications and the class interest behind that. That's Jacob Fry's agenda, his theory, his policy program for developing the city is built on high-end luxury consumption, like the Minnesota Twins, like Audi, like the environments and the businesses that are a branch of the Pohlad family companies, but then also real estate. The idea of this high density luxury housing, then further subsidizing through the affordable housing scheme, the low income housing tax credits, that just is more public money for really luxury development, low taxes on developers. He's working for them. And I think the important piece to point out is that Jacob Fry has been relentless about increasing the budget and increasing the size of the police force. He came in after the occupation of the 4th Precinct, the murder of Jamar Clark, and took the money of people like the Pohlads and fought hard for more police officers and more money for police, because that's a crucial part of the equation of their theory of economic development. If you want to raise the property values downtown, that means that the young street people, the black people, the poor people, if they're not serving somebody, then they need to be swept away, or working class people who are renters are getting in the way of people realizing higher profits. So it's like the violence of the police is about that political economy. So I think that's important, because people like the Pohlads got celebrated after the uprisings because of their philanthropic efforts, but nobody points to the fact that they're like really behind this regime that has been like really aggressively funding the police.
Yeah. It's really insidious.
It really is.
And like that same year, 2017, thousands of dollars from Ryan Company executives. Ryan Company, most recently evicted, was really behind the eviction of the Sanctuary Hotel. Like they got the strings pulled, and that's how that ended up happening, basically.
Absolutely.
Is how I understood it.
Monstrosity 11 tower that's going up there on the river right by the Stonehenge Bridge, kind of, that's going to be like $1 million condos. It's
also the Ford site in fucking St. Paul, like this massive piece of land that they're developing, all of it.
Yeah. I think even to think, oh, my bad.
Oh, is clear. Wait, Ryan Companies or United Properties?
Ryan Companies. I was just going to go through like the other, like Ryan
Please
Companies.
do. Yes, please
Frana
do.
Companies, thousands of dollars from their executives, thousands of dollars from Duran, from Abdo, which is like a really rich family. They own My Burger, and also have like a real estate company, I believe. Abdo Market House, I think it's called.
Oh, yeah. So just before you go into it, just to like, for listeners, like all of us in this project, to me, it's important to hear all of the different developers and think about them as a class, because they are a class. They have an organized class interest. Rent control is antithetical to them. That cuts into their profit. Rent control, if you're a renter, is good for your interest. It means that's the struggle that we're dealing with, and like the opposing class interests, and like public policy is where a lot of that gets played out. So these are people acting as a class in their own class interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the foundation like executes that also.
Absolutely.
By like the organizations that they fund, that they choose to fund, and they'll find reasons like that agree with the Pohlad family. Like if they can poke a hole in rent control, they will.
Certainly. I think that's like the whole, even if it's not always consciously even a choice, I think that's like the thrust of the foundation, is to like make sure ideas like rent control don't show up. Yeah. I wonder if they like are having self-reflections in terms of your foundation's focus is ending homelessness. You got billions of dollars and homelessness continues to increase. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, damn, that's just, it's like a simple math, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess if we're on the funding, Greco, Dominion Apartments, Reuter Walton, like just a who's who of like who's moving real estate, who's like getting these development deals. And on top of that, related to the Upper Harbor, you have donations from Dana Frank and Nathan Kranz, who's the general manager of First Avenue.
Yeah.
And Brandon Champeau, who's on the development team for UHT. So when all these things are lining towards one person who's doing the bidding of these people, like, you can't say there's nothing nefarious there. You can't say this isn't like legalized corruption, because that's how this country works.
Absolutely. And it's really shows that the seat of power is actually in the private sector. It's the that's why we were using the word oligarch, because it's such a dominance in terms of like networks of private capital that dictate public policy. So you think UHT got a no compete bid from the city, United Properties, through Brandon Champeau with Dana Frank from the jump, both donors to Jacob Fry's campaign, a part of this bigger conglomerate, POLAD companies that maxed out $18,000 from a local company on the local level is big money, who have gotten several contracts to develop public land. So we're talking about 48 acres of public land over north, a no bid contract to these big donors who are also, family members have worked for Senator Klobuchar. They donate to Senator Klobuchar.
Mayor Pete Bundlers.
Mayor Pete Bundlers. Big bundlers for Obama, who was had a real estate policy that was very anti-renter, pro-development. So it's, again, this is how class power gets exercised. And it's important to hear these numbers because you won't hear it in like the Star Tribune's not really presenting it in this way.
Mm-hmm. It's against their interest.
Yeah.
Who's the owner of Star Tribune again?
Glenn Taylor, Republican billionaire.
Right.
Who also came out and supported Antone. So what do you see?
Yeah.
You see the ruling class consolidating around Antone because they don't want things like rent control. Public housing is in direct competition with the POLADs because those parcels of public land that were turned over to their control, that's public land. That's where we should be building public housing. So if you see a Homes for All policy like Ilhan's enacted, that cuts into their bottom line, and inversely for us, it would build our collective wealth. Same thing with Medicare for all, same thing with the Green New Deal. And that's why I think you see them coalescing around Antone, because they don't really want those types of policies gaining in popularity.
Definitely. I think it's also worth mentioning like the three major sports franchises minus the Wild. I'm actually not sure who owns the Wild, but in Minneapolis, at least, you have Glenn Taylor owns the Timberwolves and Lynx. You have the Polads who own the Twins, and you have the Wilfs who own the Vikings, also donating to such people as Linnea Palmisano, got $1,800 from the Wilfs, got $2,400 from the Polads in 2017. You have Abdi Warsame, who is now in charge of public housing, who got $1,800 from the Wilfs and $600 from Stanley Hubbard, who is an absolute troglodyte Republican billionaire who owns KSTP, who defended the Pointergate scandal, if anyone recalls that. That was back when Betsy Hodges was mayor, right?
Yeah, it was so bad with KSTP at that point that we wouldn't allow them at the 4th precinct. There was like instructions that anybody sees a KSTP, just like block their view because just like you said, just vicious racism. That was like, buffoonish.
And then going through Andrew Johnson, $1,800 from the Polads in 2017. If you recall our summer solstice episode, we kind of went in on the fool.
Not the abolitionist Andrew Johnson, not that Andrew Johnson.
And surprise, surprise, Lisa Goodman, $3,000 that same year.
I'm going to, I don't know, I'll just say it. I've had conversations with people I trust who've worked in city planning, who've worked in city government, and who's worked in like kind of the architect nexus that are part of these development plans. And they told me, look at Lisa Goodman, because Lisa Goodman's been handing United Properties projects. And I've heard from several people, again, this is conjecture in a sense, but it's another piece of evidence that it's really icing on the cake because the numbers say it all. The power dynamics and it's very obvious what we're looking at in terms of their ability to exercise public power. But people even saying that in that world, if development proposals came out, RFPs, requests for proposals, and United Properties wanted it, that other firms wouldn't even bother to bid because they would face backlash, or that's just the way they understood the market worked, that like United Properties got the projects that they wanted. Which is like, and again, when you put in all those other people you mentioned who have donated to Fry and donated to these city council people, there's enough of the pie to go around where they kind of slice it up amongst themselves.
Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense seeing as like they both, I think two of the inheritors Pohlad family own homes in East Isles. So it makes sense that like Lisa Goodman's really notorious for doing their bidding, I guess.
Yeah.
Also probably the most conservative council member right now. I would maybe between her and Kevin Reich. I don't know. It's like, I don't know how you compare them honestly at this point, but
yeah, that's real.
Was she pushing the 2040 plan? Did she have like a role in that when that
I feel like that was more Lisa Bender.
Oh,
but
different Lisa.
Yeah, two Lisas.
Okay.
No more Lisas on the city council.
Lisa Simpson.
Did we want to touch on? Oh, I guess Anton's platforms. Do we want to like talk about that element? I think we've gone pretty deep on the money, and we could just keep saying numbers, but
yeah, no, I'm definitely down. What stands out to y'all, like when you look at his platform or compare it to Ilhan's? What are like the points that stand out to you?
Yeah, I have not been following his platform. I'll be real, but the only thing that has stood out was just like who's funding him, and just that there's a lot of Jewish families outside of Minnesota funding him, and I'm like, okay, that's something to notice.
Yeah.
I've noticed like when people bring up the like PACs that are funding him specifically and like the out of state money, he quickly like his maneuver, and it's like standard politician maneuver, but he brings it back to in-state, and he's like, I have the most individual contributions in state, or in the district, I guess. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it's like it's clever, like catching on that.
I'm sure there's some like way to aggregate the data where it's like, I have the most
like one category
in state.
Yeah. But yeah, it's I think a lot of it has arisen from like certain very conservative parts, most of the time, of the Jewish community that has found things she said as being overtly anti-Semitic. I've found those same comments she's made as being overtly on the nose, especially considering the large influence that the Israel lobby has at every level of our government.
Is this where we do a caveat? We're Jewish, like to our fellow
I'm not going to
Jewish
claim to
listeners out
speak for the
there.
entire Jewish community, because there's large parts of the Jewish community that I fucking abhor because they are the ones funding Anton. But it's still, I know there was like more progressive folks that like felt slighted personally, and I think that for me, it just came down to checking like how I've been initiated into like tropes. And that's what people kept saying, like she was playing on tropes. And I was like, she was also quoting rap songs, like talking about money and politics, which is like bread and butter.
Right.
So it's like, how are you going to talk about the money that the Israel lobby has and how that influences our politicians? And also the fact, which gets lost in that, is that the majority of the Israel lobby in America is Christians, is a lot of evangelical Christians. So that, for me, like my initial response was just kind of disgusted by this conflation of Jews with Israel, because personally, I grew up inundated with a lot of Israeli propaganda. And at this point, I've actively worked to disarm myself of that and realize there's really no personal connection to that swath of land. So that's where I'm coming from. I don't know.
Yeah, I bet my Uncle Richie probably donated to Anton's campaign just because he's running against Ilhan. He lives in Central Jersey. You know, like I have like these more right-wingers, one issue voter, which is Israel, Jewish family members across the U.S., and they know who she is because she's like said these things and has become demonized, and like especially Fox News, which is what they imbibe, so you have like a lot of people that are like rallied up. And if they have access to wealth, then they'll use it because it goes in their interest, like they're just funding what they want.
And I think it's also important to note that like a very, very similar thing happened when Keith Ellison was first running to represent this district. And so having lived through that, having seen the backlash that my dad got for endorsing him through his paper, it feels very familiar. It feels very much like if we're going to pin something on a person, we're going to do it because they're threatening our class interests.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. Ilhan's an advocate of Medicare for all. She introduced the Homes for All bill. Things that, directly go against capitalism.
Yeah.
But I just feel like a lot of white Jews like call out any sniff of anti-Semitism if it's not a white person. So you have like a black Muslim woman who's calling them out, and like they're gonna be like, "How dare she?" But like so many whack shit comes out of so many other politicians' stuff.
Yeah,
and there's not like a campaign against them.
Yeah, these are the people who decry Farrakhan while like voting for Trump. It's really hypocritical.
Yeah,
it's really ignorant of the problem and the issue and how this is all fueled by white supremacy. And then you have like Israel that's directly allying itself with like fascist white supremacist leaders in Europe and, dictators all over at this point. But
yeah, us included.
Yeah.
And we're like, I think one thing I value about Ilhan is starting to like show the world what like an internationalist U.S. working class movement could talk like and think like, the idea of like the anti-imperialist positions. And again, like, I don't even want to get into how much is real and how much is, it's just good rhetorically or good for like the truth. Like, so from my perspective, it's like, okay, how can I really talk about the reality of settler colonialism in Israel and talk about the Palestinian people and help people in my life not equate all Jews with Israel or Zionism with Judaism, and not allow to identify anti-Semitism where it comes up, because it is a real thing. It's a history here, and like it's something that foils working class movements too. Like people have been poisoned with that ideology. So I feel like in conversation around Ilhan, those types of opportunities come up, and it's important to I think I'm agreeing with what she's saying, and obviously there's like so much disingenuous attacking because that's the way that people use the issue of Israel in American politics to like, it's a part of that right wing nexus.
And it's been used successfully, like just looking at like Jeremy Corbyn and like how basically tanked his chances.
For real.
So yeah, it's like a recycled, reused tactic. And personally, I found it extremely disingenuous. And I don't want to discount like any like, I guess, hurt people felt, but I also want to challenge those people to like assess why they're hurting and like why they've been, co-opted to develop this emotional reaction to certain words.
Real shit.
Yeah, evaluate it. Going off of what you're saying about like her anti-imperialism, I remember at that Bernie rally where she was on stage with him, like that was the biggest cheer was, I think, from Bernie, like talking about ending U.S. imperialism.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And I don't think I've heard a politician say something on that level, let alone maybe like local, but like that was big for me personally.
Me too.
Connecting that to the fact that one of Anton's big hits, like I've heard a couple interviews with him and he'll be like, I'm not in favor of the fact that she voted against Turkey sanctions. And for me, I'm like, I'm in favor of that. Sanctions aren't like designed to hurt the leaders that you're beefing with.
Exactly.
They're designed to hurt the people at the bottom of the fucking food chain in that economy.
Right.
And you see that with Venezuela, like US will put sanctions on them and then they'll point to like people going hungry, people not having what they need. And a lot of it is like, inflated, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like that's one of his big knocks on her. And then bringing up USMCA, which I'm like, why do you think like this like slightly less disastrous trade bill is going to like play in Congressional District 5? Like,
what is USMCA? Oh, the Mexico, Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like NAFTA 2.0 basically.
Yeah.
And I haven't like gotten into the nitty gritty because I'm like, it sounds bad.
Right.
I'm sure it's bad, but like just the most minutia less bad or something, because that's how like every fucking presidential candidate on stage at those debates was saying like it's a slight improvement, and then people would knock Bernie on voting against it.
Okay, I am remembering this.
Remember
now.
that? Yeah. It was like the later debates, I feel like, and like I'm sure like it didn't resonate with a lot of people because it's like 5 letters and it's like there's so many, you know, so many quick like abbreviated deals that are thrown out there in a debate that are just like designed to confuse. But if you frame it as like this person was against it and that was bad, then people will be like,
that's what he did. So Ilhan voted against it.
Ilhan voted against it, I guess, and so did Bernie.
Yeah, so Ilhan voted right. What the fuck? And I think that's what I think the wing of the Democratic Party that he represents, or like that whole line of thinking, and what I hear from a lot of people endorsing him is saying like, Ilhan's a barn burner, or we need somebody who's a compromiser, or she's taking these alienating positions. But I would be willing to bet that Ilhan is more conservative than the average member of her district in a lot of ways, especially the working class people. When she says a little peak of truth, we're finally getting a drop of water. Like we want to hear the full anti-imperialism, socialism, like all that. So I think this idea that it's a rhetorical tool that they're saying that she's sabotaging the district because she's making them nervous, but she's actually fighting for us and having an impact and building the type of coalition that could actually win debt cancellation or win Medicare for all. And she's actually more effective. You know, they're like acting as if her efficacy is the issue. But if you add any layer of like class consciousness to it, it's like, no, it's because she's a threat to them because she is effective in the way that she's mobilizing people.
Should we just say we do not endorse officially politicians as a pod?
Yeah, we don't. Go vote for Ilhan and then ask Ilhan to step up around RAD in Section 18.
And keep pushing,
Yes.
I mean,
Thank you for saying cancel student debt, Ilhan.
Yeah.
I'll say that. Just as far as you didn't have to do that. You know what I'm saying? And whatever drove that decision, that shit was so healing for me to hear that in an arena full of people. I've been pushing that shit for so long, and my debt is killing me. Like, that's just like, it's still an issue. Like, I'm realizing now after the uprisings, I'm still getting harassing phone calls from debt collectors and still like really, you know, no real security. And it's like, that should be canceled. That's a issue that we could build like a socialist politics around, you know, and I appreciate Ilhan for making that statement.
Yeah, going off that, I'm just going to read a little piece of Antone's policy. I think this is in his healthcare. First of all, primary care for all, that shit is garbage. Boo. I think he says like public option, but primary care for all, you're like co-opting Medicare for all, but it's just meaningless. Like, oh, we get everyone to the doctor, then they won't need specialty care. But if they do need specialty care, you might be on your own, you know?
Yeah,
it's
I feel like
does
the
it include dental and
comparative, the more you're saying it, it's a Mayor Pete move. Medicare for all who want it.
If you want it,
Primary care for all, head ass.
But he says, and this might sound like a certain presidential candidate's similar style of policy, but in addition to increasing investment in primary care as a portion of total spending, I support creating a student debt forgiveness program available to medical students who work in primary care in underserved areas characterized by low densities of primary care providers. With an average medical student debt burden of nearly $200,000, the high-cost, low-compensation environment that typically characterizes primary care in underserved areas make the physician shortage particularly acute in areas that most need care. We must improve the allocation of primary care physicians to reduce costs and improve outcomes. And this program would make it feasible for more students to opt for primary care service. I swear this dude says like primary care dozens and dozens of times in this like blurb. And I think it's, I don't know what you think about it, but it's like, I understand the tactic that he's going for.
I think he figured it out. I think he's got it. I think that would be the move. Like, if we do that, then the right doctor will be born.
Loan forgives.
And he'll invent the stint that will keep the rest of us who are still in debt, our heart beating while they suck more profits from us. Oh my God. It's just like, just from okay, if you want to look at it from a political perspective, all them fucking words when you could say cancel student debt and it'll light the country on fire because it's easily understandable.
Yeah.
And that speaks a working class language, and it's just a truthful moral statement. But then you get into this technocratic, means tested, like you said, it's like Kamala Harris style. You might be able to get some debt forgiveness if you jump through all these hoops and participate in all these weird capitalist projects, and it's just a dying politics like that doesn't inspire anybody other than the people who it's like technocratic liberalism. I think a big part of his biography that I read was he was like the captain of everything and the number one of everything, and that's what he's selling is like, I'm not a firebrand, I'm smarter than the people, I know the right technical fixes. And it's insulting, you know, when you think about the predatory student debt industry. I noticed that he did say the one thing he said was he would want to push to make student debt an option to be. You
could discharge it through bankruptcy.
Exactly, which you can't do now, which would be a helpful little reform. But it's like, no, it wouldn't, because cancel all student debt. It's simple. Like any type of move that you try to pull to forestall that shows that you're like for the people who are leeching off of us. You're not for us.
Yeah. It's pretty whack.
Very whack. I seen the real estate was a big funding source for him when I was looking at his numbers. Like they break it down by industry. And again, a marked difference from Ilhan's Homes for All, which is calling for massive investment in public housing, which is like in line with the Green New Deal principles, which includes a national rent control, much of the platform that made Bernie so popular. That's the issue. That's what we're voting for on Tuesday. It's not even, it is Ilhan in a sense. I understand Ilhan's personal courage, and I'm not trying to discount that, but to get away from the idol worship, it's like we're voting for Medicare for all, for a Green New Deal, for public housing, for rent control, for an internationalism, all these things, you know. What was I saying that again? Oh, because his policy around housing is more of the same affordable housing. You know, he affirms the role of low-income housing tax credits, affirms the role of TIF financing, talks about some modest boost to public housing, but it's not even close to what Ilhan's talking about.
And I'm sure it's all like pandering. I mean, he has no... That's the other thing. Like Ilhan has proven herself to like advocate for these positions at the federal level.
Real shit.
And this is someone breaking on the scene, never ran for public office before, used to work for a union busting law firm. Though he says that he wasn't in those rooms. He was, you know, in a separate cubicle working on like other work. But
exactly.
Yeah, like saying he'll like rehabilitate public housing and he wants to expand public housing, but it's like, this seems like you're like cosplaying a little bit.
And it's just, you could pull that same paragraph exists on every single liberal's electoral platform. You know, it's like, it's all just mushy, you know, it's nothing real, and it has no energy behind it. So it's like, yeah, that shit is dead.
We good on that.
Hey, one day I'm gonna do an episode breaking down Betsy Hodges' whack letter in the New York Times. We don't got time today.
I'm hungry.
Yeah, for real. Keep it. Hey, become a patron. This is what we should say before we log off is we're getting ready to drop season 2. Very excited. The Upper Harbor Terminal process is getting going. You know, they're going to be potentially bringing the plan back to city council in October. I don't know. Are they waiting on like the state bonding to be figured out? Because that shit's going to take forever. It seems like. I don't know. Yeah. So either way, things are moving. The state bonding is still being held up. It might be in the bonding request, and we're not sure when the legislature is going to reconvene. It could be in a couple weeks. And the plan is to move the final development plan to the city council sometime this fall. So we're going to start releasing season 2, digging back in with more focus on the Upper Harbor. And that's a part of why we wanted to talk about the POLADs today. So think about these billionaires who are exerting all this influence on our public policy and on our public life through their businesses, through their campaign contributions, are the people who the city is transferring 48 acres of public land over north to. That's after the uprisings. That's after COVID. That's after all the holes in our economy have been exposed more brazenly. They're still planning on doing this, and that's unacceptable, you know? So tune in. We got a new Patreon tier. You could become a cheese subscriber now, $10. We got some cool little swag bags coming for anybody who
Cheese
goes
tier.
to 10. Salute to Deanna. Y'all got any closing thoughts?
Oh, we're on social media finally. So follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Jake, did you make a Twitter?
No, but my challenge is, let me know if I made this when you listen to it. Try to tweet us.
It's your challenge.
Against the clock now.
Right, exactly.
Follow us on the socials. And if you become a cheese subscriber, you will get a dope swag bag that is in the works and possibly a planter. We'll see how many plantlings I can foster. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Nice. Get out there and vote.
Yeah.
Or die.
Or die.
All right. Money.
Power.
Land.
Solidarity.
We need money, land, solidarity. If you funny, stand very far away from me. We have running plans about as far as they can see to keep them